my name's Jessie, and I am a 16-year-old, nearly 17, youth climate activist based in Devon. And I'm also the founder and creator of the movement People Pedal Power, or hashtag Ride to COP26.
Oh, fantastic. So have you always been interested in the climate and the environment?
I suppose I've always been interested in the environment. I've always gardened and been out in nature. But I wouldn't say that I've always been aware of the climate crisis. And I think that's particularly why I've got so interested in the last few years, because I've kind of felt let down as to why I wasn't aware of it. And I think the whole reason to do with that is we haven't treated it as a climate emergency for so long. So to answer your question, no, I haven't always been aware, but I'm certainly aware right now.
When did you start becoming more aware of the problem with the planet and the climate and start thinking, actually, do you know what, I need to do something about that?
I think it must have been about 2 or 3 years ago when I was, I suppose, coming out of that very childlike phase of not really being aware of the news and starting to get a better grasp on the world. And I kind of, was reading things and I was learning things, and I just started to learn about the science of our planet and our climate and how imbalanced humans are with it, and then how we are, in essence, destroying it. So that's kind of when I knew, and from since then, it's just been a learning journey of learning more about it, and kind of coming out of a big period of climate anxiety and climate grief, because when you're met with these immense facts about our future and how it could be quite bleak if we don't take action now, I kind of then sort of started to take action, but that's been quite a slow journey of finding my feet and learning, because it's a whole new topic, it's a whole new area which we're not taught about, so it is such a big learning journey.
I love the words that you use there about sort of the climate anxiety or climate grief. Are you having conversations with your friends? Like, is this a big concern with, 16, 17-year-old?
I think for many of us it is, but I think for lots of us it isn't. So I think it's a very split issue, because I think in the media you hear so many people talking about the younger generation, climate strikes, all of these things. And it seems like lots and lots of young people are involved. And there's millions of us. But actually there's so many people when you move around a normal secondary school, actually so many people are unaware. So I think it's quite hard. I think as with the Tough Girl tribe, you have to find your tribe, you have to find your group of people who you can share and have conversations about it. Because I think lots of people aren't aware, and that can also almost be even worse, because you feel like you're talking to a brick wall and nobody's understanding the immense anxiety that you have and the uncertainty you have. So it's quite a mixed bag of people, in my opinion.
Tell me a little bit more about your family and growing up and your childhood. Do you have siblings? I think you mentioned that you grew up in Devon. What was your childhood like?
I've had a wonderful childhood, actually. So I live just between 20 minutes from the sea and 20 minutes from Dartmoor. So I've got a perfect place to explore and be outside. And I've got an older sister and my parents, and I've always been quite outdoorsy with my childhood, always, going out to the sea, going to Dartmoor, coastal walks. So I feel very lucky to be where I live. And I suppose that's probably helped me to become more aware of nature and the crisis we're in, because I was outdoors with it and I've seen, and I'm very in touch with nature.
Are you studying at the moment? I'm literally like, oh my God, I feel so out of touch. I'm like, oh God, is it GCSEs? Is it A levels? Like, what is going on? Like, what else are you doing at 16? Like, what's your normal sort of life like?
Yeah, no worries at all. I think it's changing so much that nobody really knows what's going on. So I've just finished my GCSEs, last year. So it all got caught up with the pandemic, So I've just finished my GCSEs and now I'm studying for sixth form, and I'm doing geography, biology and sociology. So hopefully topics and areas that will help me in my future, with environment and sort of climate activism and that kind of thing, and just giving me a better understanding of the world. That's my plan.
I love it. So let's talk a little bit more about being sort of a youth climate activist. What does that involve? What do you do? How are you driving change?
Well, that's a really interesting question, actually, because I think whoever you ask, it will always be different. So I think activism is not just one thing. You don't have to be out in the streets, to being an activist. You can be an activist within your community and telling your family and sharing the word. But for me, I think activism comes in lots of different ways. So I first started taking different steps in my own life to make a change. So, reducing my plastic consumption, helping my family to do so, just being more aware of the impact I have on the world and trying to have a slightly lighter tread on it. And then from there, I learned more. And I think the problem with the climate crisis and this kind of area is that the more you learn, you can't unlearn it. So you can't unlearn some of potentially the old habits you had, which could have been quite damaging. So you can never really go back. It's just a constant step of moving forward. And so after that, I started to, I suppose, be more stereotypically activist. So I sort of joined certain different groups, which led me to maybe be out in the streets, sort of protesting or marching or sort of sharing the message in a variety of different ways. And also a lot of my activism comes from journalism. So I love writing. It's always something I've really loved to do. I've always found expressing myself with words is one of the best things that I can do. And so a lot of my activism comes through writing for different publications, so my local paper, and sort of through People Pedal Power, writing for a variety of different other ones. That's the way I try and do it. So to try and get the youth voice into the mainstream media, which I feel is not there, and trying to get that a more widely spread element to, because I feel that young people have such an incredible and very different voice to the adults, particularly when it comes to the climate crisis. And so that's kind of a main part of my activism.
Do you know what? It's so important. Like, so I turned 40 recently, and I still feel super young, but it's but it's
very young.
No, but it's amazing to talk to you at 16 with this passion and this energy and these completely different views. And you know, you just had this. You know, obviously you've grown up in the. Oh no! I was just about to say you've grown up in the 90s, but you haven't. You've grown up in the 2000s.
I am. I'm a 2000s baby.
Yeah. So, but before I start getting all like, I don't know what the word is, reminiscing about sort of childhood and youth, talk to me about People Pedal Power.
So People Pedal Power is the movement that I created when I found out that it would be really hard for me to get to COP26. And so to backtrack a bit, part of my climate activism has, as I've discussed, is like a learning journey. So you read more, you learn more, you watch more, and I think of it a bit like a tapestry. You're always adding new threads and new colours and different things into your picture of the world and the picture of the climate and nature, because it's such a huge topic. And so ever so slowly, I've been learning more about climate politics and how the political systems work and how we govern and we create policies around climate and looking after our planet. And one of these big things that does this is something called a COP, which stands for Conference of Parties. And it's basically a big UN climate summit where thousands of people meet, and whether they're heads of state, they're ambassadors for different countries, their campaigners, their organisations, everyone meets and discusses the climate, and they create policies and sort of targets to help us move forward and change. And there's been 26 of those, or 25, coming on to 26. And these are, in climate politics, they're quite a big landmark event that happens every year. However, last year, due to the pandemic, it was postponed. When that came into the news that it was going to be postponed, that was kind of when it came into my consciousness. And I was kind of like, oh, what is this? How does this work? And the more I read, the more I knew how important it was. And so I did lots of research. And then I heard that it was happening this year, and it's actually happening in my home country of the UK. So it's happening in Scotland, up in Glasgow, between the 31st of October and the 12th of November. And so I thought, I'm a climate activist. I feel like the climate space is governed by too many adults who, in my opinion, don't always have our best interests at heart. It's generally profit over people. And so I thought, well, there's a great opportunity to get more youth voice into the political sphere. So I sort of started researching, how can I get in there? How can I bring a youth presence, my youth activism there? Because I know lots of other young people are trying to make their voices heard in this space. And so I looked at the transport, how I could get there. I also looked how I could get in into this, heavily politicized event. And so that was when I started researching. So I looked at the transport and I found that actually it was either incredibly expensive for me to get there or incredibly time consuming. And so trying to be as environmentally friendly as possible, I didn't want to fly. I wanted to try and take public transport. But I found that going by train was extremely expensive or very time consuming. And actually that didn't seem right to me, because I thought, well, actually, we're trying to make our world a greener place, yet there's so many barriers in front of people. And particularly me coming from Devon, which is quite a rural area, we don't have the same transport in lots of the other country has, but also you could still argue that the rest of the country doesn't have as good transport infrastructure and as affordable infrastructure as we would like. That was kind of one big barrier in my way. And then the other barrier was actually, I tried to research how I could get in. I emailed hundreds of people to try and work out what routes there were, how young people could get involved, and I really struggled. And this didn't seem right to me either, because the climate crisis is such a diverse and huge issue, one of the biggest issues facing our generation and sort of the world at the moment. And I just didn't feel that it was right that people couldn't widely availably just go in and make their mark. And so those are the two factors that really caused me to think deeply about what impact I could have. And if I couldn't get there, or it was a struggle for me to get there, and if I couldn't get in, how could I suppose, do something creative and do something impactful that could help me on my way? And that was kind of where People Pedal Power was born from, because I thought, well, I want to highlight the lack of transport infrastructure and the lack of sustainable and accessible transport infrastructure. So not just sustainable, but also accessible for those with disabilities, for those who can't afford extortionate train fares. So those were all the elements that was really making me quite angry about our transport system. I thought, well, why not take one of the hardest ways to get there? And that was by bike. And I sort of was trying to work out whether I should walk there or go by bike. And I thought, well, actually, I only have a certain amount of time off school. And also this is October, November, so who knows what the weather's going to throw at me. That's kind of where the cycling element of People Pedal Power came in. And then the other element of People Pedal Power is about trying to create a movement of people joining me on my cycle to move up the country towards COP26, creating and trying to highlight the power of collective action and the power of people when they come together. And we're trying to highlight that by as many people as possible joining us by bike as we move up the country, to try and show that both physically and metaphorically people have power to get to a really big journey without carbon emissions, and also physically and mentally. So that's kind of the big factors behind People Pedal Power.
This is amazing. And I know you've got a very detailed website as well.
Yes.
Which is peoplepedalpower.wordpress.com, with more information about the route, the mission, about you, about why COP26. And it also links in with the Adventure Syndicate, who I believe that you've partnered with. Do you want to share a little bit more about the partnership, how it came about, and what that partnership's going to involve?
Of course, yes. So I'm so proud to be working with the Adventure Syndicate on this, because as I've kind of got into cycling and sort of built the movement, starting from just me wanting to cycle and then trying to create as many people to join me as possible, it's been on quite a journey. When you are interested in something, you research people and you follow people and you read about their work. And the Adventure Syndicate was someone I kept stumbling across. So it's built up of an amazing female organisation based on cycling and highlighting underrepresented voices and sharing and collaborative action. So I just loved all their messages, and they really do highlight the need for sustainable transport. And so they've done lots of, I suppose, actions you could call them, surrounding that. So I felt that their mission really linked in with my mission. And so it all happened one day when I was just in my kitchen sending out many of my emails trying to get this movement off the ground. And I emailed them. And within a few hours, I got an amazing email back from them saying, "We'd love to support you in any way. We think what you're doing is brilliant," and all of these things. And so I was super, super excited. That's how the partnership began. It just was a ball that just started rolling. I met them. We discussed. We had an amazing first meeting. And we discussed all of the ways that they wanted to support me, because I think our messages really aligned. And then we kind of went from there. And so in the movement, the Adventure Syndicate are supporting me in a variety of ways. We're working together to create a cargo bike relay. So for those listeners who don't know what a cargo bike is, I didn't know until a few months ago when I got in contact with them. But it's like it's a bike, but it's got a big carrying system on the front where you can carry people, you can carry luggage, you can carry a lot of heavy. And so we feel that they've used them on quite a few different actions, such as cycling from Edinburgh to Copenhagen in the heat of winter with 2 people on bikes and 2 people being carried by the bike. So they're really trying to highlight the power of the cargo bike. They came to me with this idea and said, "Oh, well, why don't we create a relay of cargo bikes carrying your stuff up the country to Glasgow so we can support you? And also, so actually we can highlight the power of cargo bikes and also the power of people power, which is all your messages. And also part of the movement is we don't want to just shout about what's wrong, because I feel that is something that lots of movements do. And you don't really give you the solutions. They just shout about all the bad things, and that can really lead to feelings of worry and anxiety. It doesn't really give you that motivation to change. Whereas we want the movement to be both joyful, highlighting the issues such as lack of sustainable transport infrastructure and people-led decision making, but also to highlight the ways forward. And some of those are by cargo bikes, our cargo bike relay, and also by people coming together, which is the whole part of the movement, and also by just having a variety of different bikes joining us, whether that's electric, properly human powered, or cargo bikes. And so that's one of the big ways they're supporting me. And we're hoping that this is just going to create a really big impact on people. And also part of how they share their messages is through creating films. So we're hoping to film and make a sort of film/documentary style video about the whole movement. So they're going to be supporting me to film and capture it, both through my love of journalism and sort of talking to people and sharing stories, and also sharing my story. So I'm super excited about this partnership, and both via their physical support and also the amount of mentoring they've given me, which has just been amazing.
Oh, I love all of that so much. It's just, it's women supporting women. It's coming together. It's being creative. And I think you really hit the nail on the head. Like, one thing that I'm very aware of is complaining about a situation does nothing to change it. And actually it's about taking action. And I love the word that you use there is, making it joyful and actually changing how people view it, and trying to maybe reduce the anxiety that people are feeling, or that, what's the word? Excuse me, when you're helpless, when you're feeling helpless about being able to impact and change, especially like on these policies when you can't necessarily get in there. But with this movement, with this people, the power of people, and people powered travel, yes, and creating a film with it, and being able to get other people involved on the journey. And let's talk a little bit more about the journey. So I'd love you to share a little bit more about how you got into cycling, and have you done any sort of bike packing before? And how is this journey going to work? Are you going to be camping? Are you staying with people? What are your expectations for the route?
Firstly, on the cycling front, I'll tell you what, it's a real change of tune, actually, because I've always gone, I don't like cycling. I'm scared of being on the road with other cars. It's always been a sport that I've never gone near. My dad's a cyclist. I don't want to do that. And then as the idea's built, I've really, really, really got into cycling. It started off as like a means to an end, a means to get to COP, when it was just going to be me. So the original idea was just me and my dad cycling to COP. But however, the movement has evolved since then. Through the training and the many hours out in the wind and the rain and on the moors and through my local area, I've just grown to absolutely love cycling, and love how you can travel relatively quickly, cover big distances, but also travel in a slow, less impactful way, which is a lot richer and a much more interesting experience. You get to learn the landscape, you get to meet people, and I'm sure you must have found this with all of your incredible adventures. It's just a way to connect with people and a way to connect with the landscape you're traveling through. I haven't done any bike packing, but that is my biggest goal for next summer. And I've got that bit more independence, a bit more mental resilience under my belt from this movement, because this summer it's just been all about training, all about getting those miles in. So that's kind of on the cycling side of it. So I think cycling is going to be a big thing for the rest of my life. I can really see that being lots of cycling adventures and lots of bike packing. Sorry, could you go back to your other question as well?
No, absolutely. Well, then sort of the second part linking that in is how is it going to work with regards to the route? So are you going to be camping out? Are you going to be staying in bed and breakfast? Are you going to be staying with friends? Is your dad still cycling with you? How is it all working together?
So in terms of the actual route and actual logistics, so we are setting off from my hometown of Newton Abbot on the 20th of October, and we're hoping to do it over 10 days with, I think, 2 rest days, just to make it sort of sustainable in the mental and physical sense. And my dad will be cycling with me for most of it, so up to about Lancaster. And then my mum's coming up on the train or by a hired electric vehicle. We're not too sure yet. And she will be swapping with him so he can go back to work. and look after the dog, because someone's got to look after the dog. And then my mum will be cycling the last bit up with me and on into COP, so she'll be staying with me in Glasgow. On the route, we are hoping to sort of stay in Airbnbs along the way is probably the best way to put it. So where we can cook for ourselves, look after ourselves, have a bit of downtime afterwards, because we were thinking about camping, we were thinking about staying with people. However, we just decided that actually we'll be out in the rain, highly likely due to the weather and the weather forecast at the moment. We'll be out in the rain, we'll be meeting lots and lots of people. We'll kind of just want a space to sort of have a bit of downtime, look after ourselves, a bit of mental rest. So therefore we will be not camping, which I was really up for, but I think looking at sort of the weather and just making it more sustainable, we'll be staying in sort of self sustained accommodation.
It makes a lot of sense, because I think also people forget, because you're going to be, I assume that you're going to be sharing your journey as you go on social media. So Instagram posts, Instagram stories, Twitter, Reels, TikTok, like, oh my God, it's overwhelming. I just know from my personal experiences of when you're doing these physical challenges, you know, riding 50, 60, 70 miles a day and, you know, meeting new people and also sharing the journey, it is very, very mentally draining. Like, and it's really difficult to describe to people. Like, people are like, oh, you've just been cycling all day, or just, you know, I've recently come back from my walking challenge, you've just been walking all day. And it's like, yes, but the hardest thing is to get into, you know, your tent or your bed and then to make your notes and then update everybody and share where you are and what you're doing. And so actually I think taking the rest days and sort of just having that accommodation where you, at least, you know, you can get dry, have a bed, have a shower, it will help. It will help with the challenge. It's a really important aspect of it. What are you?
I totally. Sorry.
No, carry on.
I was going to say, I totally agree with you, because I think initially my thought was, you know, it'll all be fine. I'll just keep going, and you know, we'll stay with people. It'll be a really, really, every part of the movement will be community orientated. However, as you said, over time, over learning, I know what I'm like when I come in from a long day ride and I'm just tired and I want food and I want a bed and I want to sort of have some kind of time to myself to decompress. And I think, particularly as I won't just be coming home after the movement, I will be staying in Glasgow, which will be absolutely teeming with thousands and thousands of people extra because of the summit and how busy that will be. Actually, I will need some time to try and make it, as I keep saying, as physically and mentally sustainable as possible. So you're very right in that.
With regard to, you know, the cycling, 10 days, I think that what's the total mileage? It's 500 plus miles that you're going to be cycling?
Yeah, so it's 570 miles. So it's quite a big journey for someone who hasn't really done that kind of thing before. So I'm hoping that my training, particularly on Dartmoor with all its hills, is a really good way to get fit quite quickly. And so I'm hoping that the rest of the country is relatively flat, which is what I've been told. But I wonder whether people are telling me just to make me feel better. So I'll only believe them when I'm there. Yeah. So yeah, it's quite a few miles.
Have you got any concerns about completing the journey, or anything that's maybe playing on your mind a little bit about taking this challenge on?
I think quite a few things. I think the weather, because I think we all know how the weather impacts us. As I look out the window right now, it's absolutely chucking it down, and so it's not really giving me much faith in our Great British weather. So I think that's a really big worry of mine. Is I know I can cycle through wind and rain because I've done it many times. It's just not particularly pleasurable, and I think over 10 days that can really sort of weigh you down. I think my body, I think I've trained as much as I can. I've done all the sort of cross training with trying to strengthen other muscles as well. But I think you'll never know until you're on the road. And I suppose we're doing quite big mileage, not compared to many, many people who do big adventures like this. But I think for my first time, I don't really know how mentally and physically I'm going to react. And I hope all my training and all my learning and listening, particularly to the Tough Girl podcast and listening to other people's stories about mental resilience, I'm hoping that will help me to sort of gain some strength. But I think it's just lots and lots of unknowns, it's my biggest worry at the moment.
I'm so excited for you. Like, this is just going to be such an incredible journey to go on, such an amazing experience. And the reason why is so important as well is you know why you're doing this, you know why you need to get to Glasgow, why you want to get to COP26, and you know the impact that you want to make. And what are your expectations for Glasgow? How is it going to work when you're there?
When I'm there, I'm hoping to, well, it's very, very difficult to get into the actual summit itself, but I'm hoping to have got a pass with an organisation I work with called Eco Schools. However, that's not completely firmed up yet. But all around COP, it won't just be politicians, it will be lots of different organisations and sort of activist groups, all trying to make a difference, all trying to make their impact and trying to make their messages known. So I'm hoping to be able to sort of join in with some of that activity and sort of be part of more collective action. But also I'm hoping to, even if it's just for myself or with some other people I've been talking to in organisations, to actually do some of my journalism and sort of trying to bring more of a youth perspective to the summit, because I think for many it's so heavily politicised, it's so heavily moved in by adults, and also the youth voice is so very little in the media around the climate crisis, that actually I'm really hoping to just try and make a small difference in that aspect and trying to find opportunities where I can do that. I'm really looking forward to actually being in Glasgow itself, because I think it's going to be a huge melting pot of politics and joy and action and outrage and optimism. And so I think it's just going to be an amazing atmosphere to be in.
Jessie, I'd love for you to share how people can follow along with your journey, because you're going to be starting on the 20th of October. This episode is going to be coming out on the 19th of October. So from tomorrow, people will be able to follow along with you. Where should they go? How can they get involved?
You can follow us on social media. So that's People Pedal Power on Instagram, and also the Adventure Syndicate. I'm sure we'll be doing a lot through their channels. So there's more information on the website, which I'm sure you could probably put in the description below. And there'll be lots of updates on there. And also we're hoping to have a live tracker on there, so you'll be able to follow us up the country, whether you want to come out and join along for a few miles if it passes near your area, which would be amazing to have anybody who can hop out on their bike or just come and support would be really cool. However, if not, you can follow us along on hopefully our live tracker, or if not, on updates through our social media channels. So that's, yeah. And we're hoping to have probably some media along the way who'll be sharing it more mainstream, but that's not confirmed yet.
Oh, fantastic. And then Jessie, what we're going to be doing as well is we are going to be having another conversation around the 11th or 12th of November, and then we're going to be releasing a Tough Girl extra episode on the 13th of November, talking and sharing more about the journey that you've just been on, you know, the incredible cycle ride up to Glasgow, that 570 miles. You're going to be sharing more about the summit, the people that you've met, the corporations, the organizations, and talk more about, you know, the lessons that you've learned from this cycle journey, and B, this summit and attending it, which I think will be absolutely fascinating. And so, you know, we're going to be speaking in a couple of weeks' time. And I suppose, what would you like to happen in the interim? What are your dreams and your expectations for this, so that when you listen back, you'll be like, oh yeah, this is what I wanted to happen, and yes, it happened, or no, it didn't happen this time. So yeah, talk me through the dream.
Oh wow, okay. Well, firstly, I'm really looking forward to coming back on and sharing, because right now it seems very weird to think about. In our house, we always think about before COP and after COP, because it's just such a huge thing in my life at the moment. So thinking about anything afterwards is quite daunting, because this has consumed my last year. But in expectations and hopes and dreams, I suppose, firstly, that the cycle ride goes well, that I don't get an injury, I've got sort of some kind of tendonitis in my knees at the moment. So I'm hoping that by the time, I'm doing a lot of resting, so I'm hoping that they will hold up throughout the ride, and that the ride is a success in the form that, you know, people join us, we have as much action as possible, we can create as much impact as possible, and that it all just goes well, I suppose, all my planning and all my hopes. I think with COP, I think most people have got their hopes on this COP as being the most decisive COP for climate action, and I think there'll be a lot of people that are really, really campaigning and pushing hard for the action that we really need, because I think it could be said by many people that lots of COPs have failed because they haven't had the action that was necessary at the time, because we've had to have 26 of them. So it's almost like we really need the action this time. So I think that's my biggest hope from COP. So yeah, I just hope it all goes smoothly. That's my biggest fingers crossed.
Oh, Jessie, have an amazing ride. I hope I get to see you on the way up. I'll try my best to come out. I think Warrington's probably the closest version or closest area to me, but I'll be checking out the route. I'll be following along. I'll be supporting. I'll be retweeting and sharing with the Tough Girl tribe and the community. But I know everybody is behind you. Just have an incredible journey, and thank you for taking this on, and power to the people, and people pedal power. And yeah, we'll be speaking to you in a couple of weeks, and I just know I'm so excited. So Jessie, thank you so much indeed for sharing more about your life, your passions, your interests, and the change that you are driving. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, and for all your support, and I look forward to seeing people on the road.
Hey tribe, I hope you enjoyed that episode with Jessie. What an absolute inspiration. I love her passion and the fact that she is following her dreams and wanting to make this change. If you are brand new to the Tough Girl podcast, my name is Sarah Williams. I'm the host of the Tough Girl podcast and the founder of Tough Girl Challenges, which is all about motivating and inspiring you while increasing the amount of female role models in the media. Everything that we have talked about today will be available in the show notes at toughgirlchallenges.com. So please do go and check it out. So one of the companies that Jessie talked about was the Adventure Syndicate. So I have actually spoken to a few of the Adventure Syndicate riders, but I'm just going to focus a little bit more on what they're going to be doing for Jessie. So if you visit their website, theadventuresyndicate.com, there is a section dedicated to the hashtag Ride to COP26, and on there it talks a little bit more about Jessie, People Pedal Power, her journey from the coastline of southern England to Glasgow by bike. But this is where the Adventure Syndicate comes in. So I'm just going to read this from the website. So the Adventure Syndicate will support Jessie through a cargo bike relay with over 30 members of the extended Adventure Syndicate family riding the cargo bike for sections of the route, carrying everything Jessie will need to be self-sufficient on the trip. Continuing the legacy of Resolution Race, the cargo bike will not only provide physical support, but will also tangibly represent one of the viable solutions to developing a more sustainable transport system. After all, this journey is not just about highlighting what is wrong, but also about demonstrating solutions. Adventure Syndicate filmmaker Catherine Dunn will also be part of the movement, co-producing a feature-length film with Jessie to showcase the power of the movement and the stories of those involved. Young people, underrepresented groups and climate experts will be invited and encouraged to join for a few miles of the Ride to COP26 route to create a diverse collection of people and stories that cannot be ignored. The film will not follow the traditional hero's journey, but instead focus on the power that can be sought from collective action, collaboration, trust, and the voices of the future. The Adventure Syndicate support is being funded by a crowd-funded campaign. So I will be putting links to the Adventure Syndicate, and I'll also be putting links to the crowd-funded campaign. And the other thing that we talked about as well is that we are going to be speaking to Jessie again. So Jessie is starting her journey tomorrow on the 20th of October, and then we're going to be catching up with Jessie on around the 11th or 12th of November, with a new episode coming out on the 13th of November, with it being a Tough Girl extra podcast episode where we'll talk to Jessie about her challenge that she's just completed, about COP26, about the journey and what's gone on and the lessons that have been learned. So thank you again for all of your incredible support. All of the links will be available at toughgirlchallenges.com, so please do go and check it out. You may have noticed that the Tough Girl podcast is sponsorship and ad-free, and that's due to the support of the patrons. So if you want to find out more about supporting the Tough Girl podcast and signing up as a patron, please visit Patreon, patreon.com/toughgirl podcast. And if you visit the Patreon's page, you can find all of the different tiers and levels that you can support at. There's a monthly option and there is an annual option. All patrons will get their name on a dedicated patrons page on the Tough Girl website, and all female patrons are invited to join the Tough Girl Tribe, which is the closed Facebook group that I run. So thank you so much for all your incredible support. Thank you so much for listening. Tell a friend about the Tough Girl podcast and share it on your social media. That would mean the world to me. But wherever you are, whatever you are doing, give it your all, give it 110%. Get after it, go for it, believe in yourself, because I believe in you. Take care, lots of love, and I will speak to you soon. Bye.